faithfully conveying value and interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally Talks Books. I'm your narrator for this book. Yang Ding Dong. Have you ever experienced desperately pursuing something you deeply desire? Then, after obtaining it, if you suddenly lose it, you crave it even more intensely. For instance, when obsessed with an idol, you long to see them daily, but meeting them brings only fleeting satisfaction before anxiety returns. When will you see them next? Or say you love gaming so much you sometimes play all night. Then, when parents abruptly forbid gaming, you feel physically ill, restless, scheming ways to play just once more. This vicious cycle is addiction. People get addicted to many things, including drugs and alcohol. Beyond typically bad, addictive substances, many good things can hook us too, like love, sex, soap operas, or web novels. Today's book, The Addicted Brain, reveals addiction's secrets. Its subtitle, A Neuroscientist's Journey Through Addiction. Because author Mark Lewis was once an addict himself, he abused multiple drugs, from high school marijuana to stealing lab pharmaceuticals, battling addiction for years, ultimately becoming Canada's renowned psychologist and neuroscientist. Through vivid personal stories, he chronicles his drug addicted journey. While storytelling, he neuroscientifically explains addiction's brain mechanisms. Though his examples involve drug abuse specifically, the neuropsychological mechanisms behind all addiction, drugs, alcohol, idol worship, gaming, are fundamentally identical. So, what traps us in addiction and why is quitting so hard? And how did the author ultimately break free? Let's begin with Lewis's story. His addiction started in adolescence with unresolved loneliness and confusion. At 15, he left his Toronto home for Tabor Academy in New England, USA. This was a quasi-naval academy, similar to a military school, with strict management. After classes each day, there was nowhere to go except the dorms, making life suffocating. Being new and relatively young, he frequently experienced campus bullying. Back then, a domineering football forward in their dorm often bullied weaker male classmates. Once, that forward forced Lewis to check his closet. Timidly approaching, Lewis saw what looked like a puddle. Before he could speak, the bully slapped the water violently, drenching him. Terrified, Lewis cried. Tian Fang jeered gleefully. You're crying. Lewis, poor baby. You should call your mom, he taunted, while other classmates burst into laughter around them. Lewis felt deeply humiliated and later endured mockery from other seniors. Initially, he constantly blamed himself, thinking, why do they torment me? It must be something wrong with me, he thought, but couldn't identify what. Later, he complained to his mom by phone. Her advice, if you don't react or ignore them, they'll stop. But Lewis felt this was the worst advice. He was utterly shattered and couldn't fathom pretending to be unaffected. Ages 13 to 16 are psychologically the most fragile period for teens. During this phase, boys' depression often stems from feeling weak, breeding shame, perceived incompetence, and denial of self-worth. Compounded by studying alone with no comfort, Lewis developed mild depression. So he began rebelling through antisocial behaviors. Amid this oppression, Lewis first encountered alcohol, though his school strictly forbade leaving residences at night, let alone drinking. Yet he sneaked into nearby forests with classmates to drink. Heavy alcohol brought intense euphoria. Dabbling nonsense and marching exaggeratedly in the woods, he felt unmistakable joy, carefree, confident, utterly unconcerned with others' judgments. Despite terrible hangovers, the drunk sensation felt incredible, making him desperate to repeat it. Gradually, he became unsatisfied with alcohol. But instead of turning directly to drugs, he bought an extra-strength cough syrup from a pharmacy containing dextromethorphan, a central nervous system suppressant with numbing effects. He felt this might help him escape his pain, leading Lewis to develop a dependence on drugs. The second reason was his family's lack of understanding and support, causing him to feel depressed and helpless. Due to his unhappiness at Tabor Academy, he wanted to transfer to another school. He didn't tell his parents first. Instead, he contacted the school he wanted to transfer to himself. That school was in Puerto Rico, a small island in the Caribbean with beautiful scenery. A friend told him it was like paradise. Classes during the day, but ending early. Then they could bike around the island, seeking beautiful beaches, freely drink rum, and chase girls, which fascinated Lewis. During winter break, he flew back to Toronto immediately, told his parents he planned to transfer, but faced instant opposition. His parents thought it was too late to change schools now, since he'd already been at Tabor for 2 years and was about to graduate. We have no reason to let you risk going to a new school, which left Lewis feeling overwhelmed. Just thinking about spending the whole winter at Tabor again made his stomach turn. So he bought a bag of marijuana from an old classmate. After smoking it, his entire perception changed. He felt excited, and vivid images of Puerto Rico flooded his mind. These pleasant scenes instantly pulled him out of his despairing reality, as if entering a new world. Besides family, the third reason for Lewis's drug addiction came from the school, atmosphere, and peer influence. These deepened his dependence on drugs. After graduating from Tabor Academy, he enrolled at the University of California, Berkeley. In the 1960s, America saw the rise of the hippie movement, seeking freedom and rebelling against tradition. But it evolved to extremes, involving drug use, and Berkeley was a hub of hippie culture. The author's life and studies at Berkeley were bittersweet. On one hand, he enjoyed California's sunshine and loved the new knowledge in university classes. He also dated a girl named Susan, but on the other hand, he still had this lingering loneliness, often feeling restless and anxious. Plus, his relationship with his parents was bad. He constantly heard their complaints and felt super annoyed. Mm. Yeah. Later, he befriended three new pals, all seasoned drug users, called the Trio. They brought hallucinogens to Lewis and often comforted him when he had emotional meltdowns. Lewis felt safe and happy hanging out with this trio. To fit in with the trio's activities, he started using heroin. In his eyes, heroin was a badge of courage, and stuff like marijuana or hallucinogens just didn't do it for him anymore. With the trio's help, he injected heroin into himself. By that point, Lewis was hooked on drugs big time. Just thinking about the high from drugs made him crave more. But heroin wasn't the end of his drug saga. In his sophomore year, he dropped out of Berkeley, then had a traffic accident that got him addicted to painkillers for the trauma. That's the story of how the author kept getting hooked on drugs over and over. From his tale, you can see people's first drug try often comes from life's curveballs, inner gloom, loneliness, anxiety that make them want to escape. And at that low point, if someone hands you a way out of the pain, folks will jump on it. Once they taste that sweet relief, they sink deeper into the addiction. So why do drugs help people ditch the pain? Why can't addicts quit this stuff? Next up, let's talk about the brain mechanics of addiction. It's all a learning process. This process is the same whether it's drug addiction, substance abuse, or behavioral addictions like gaming or idol chasing. The first step is trying new things to figure out which action or drug gives you what kind of mood shift. Like after heavy drinking, the author felt, super happy, carefree, and confident. And after smoking weed, visions of Puerto Rico's gorgeous coast popped into his head, making life seem full of hope. These experiences wire your brain with an equation. Do this stuff, and I'll feel better. Neuroscientists call this process establishing a reward mechanism, with brain opioids being key substances that help build it. Opioids are among the most crucial neuropeptides. Neuropeptides are emotional molecules governing our feelings. They reveal what's happening emotionally, letting you sense anger, excitement, or love. Normally, our bodies produce opioids naturally. For instance, long jogs in parks can trigger their release, easing pain and creating pleasure to make you feel good. Actually, when chasing idols, gaming, or hugging loved ones, opioids may spontaneously release, helping relieve pain and generate joy. But our natural opioid levels are low. For those in deep pain or depression, it's often insufficient relief. That's when people seek external drugs to boost opioid supply. Many drugs contain opioids like morphine and heroin. Once heroin enters the system, it activates various brain regions. As author Lewis described, it unlocked feelings of bliss. He felt the world spinning, himself sinking, all wrapped in emotional euphoria. Depression and loneliness vanished, along with parental fears. Lewis felt supremely happy. Okay, that's addiction's first step. By altering mood to reshape the brain, opioids spark pleasure, just feeling good. But that's not enough. True addiction requires assigning meaning after feeling good, creating anticipation. That brings us to step two. Step two involves a brain region called the orbitofrontal cortex. Its main job, evaluating whether actions are good or bad, safe or dangerous, attractive or repulsive, then deciding whether to pursue that behavior. Like when Lewis felt bliss after heroin, his orbitofrontal cortex registered this as attractive and desirable. When he next sank into depression, he'd crave heroin's euphoric relief, intensifying his desire to use again. But just having pleasurable experiences and anticipating happiness isn't enough. What ultimately drives you back to heroin is a motivational system. Step three of addiction. Step three. While opioids and the orbitofrontal cortex point toward your desire, you need fuel to propel you toward it. That fuel is dopamine. The striatum, dopamine's source in the brain, generates motivation and desire. The author recounts a romance. Lisa's letters activated his dopamine pumps, sparking intense craving. As he envisioned their romantic future, his striatum kicked into gear. First, opioids create happiness, then they trigger dopamine release. Dopamine floods the orbitofrontal cortex, which judges this Lisa fantasy as deeply desirable. The cortex relays this verdict back to the striatum, which initiates action, commanding you, "Call Lisa and ask her to dinner now." Passionate love feels like addiction. Your partner brings pure joy. This joy becomes a reward, making you crave constant closeness. Dopamine then drives repeated action, addiction's core process, learning what feels good and how to get more, leading to compulsive repetition. Meaning, once you discover a pleasure-triggering behavior, you repeat it endlessly. Like gaming daily for euphoria or drinking nightly to numb pain, that's addiction. So fundamentally, addiction is corrupted learning. We've covered addiction's brain mechanisms. While temporarily gratifying, it creates long-term dependency that traps you. We often see in movies and news how addicts suffer during rehab. They might quit forcibly at first, but relapse repeatedly. As they say, kicking the habit is easy, kicking the craving is hard. So why is quitting so tough once you're hooked on something? First, drugs make the brain obsess over chasing that same high, forming bad habits that reduce neural flexibility, making it believe drugs are the only source of joy. Of course, drugs are just one classic addiction example. Other addictive things or behaviors affect the brain similarly, though maybe less intensely than drugs. As mentioned earlier, the striatum releases opioids for happiness, which then triggers dopamine release. Dopamine floods the orbitofrontal cortex for evaluation. Feedback to the striatum prompts more dopamine, creating a closed loop. This loop runs through countless cortical synapses. Each drug use activates it, delivering pleasure and relief, strengthening those synapses. They're like water carving deeper trenches in soil. It gradually rewires neural pathways into entrenched memories. From drug use, pleasure, pain relief, craving more, a closed neural circuit forms. Meanwhile, synapses outside this loop weaken and atrophy. In other words, People grow reliant on drugs for joy, ignoring alternatives. Addicts develop tunnel vision, losing other dreams, making recovery brutally hard. That's the first reason quitting feels impossible. Second, recovering addicts exhaust themselves fighting cravings, leading to ego depletion, fatigue that destroys self control. Author Lewis recounts a relapse attempt. He was then a psychology student over 2 years since his last injection. But recent troubles hit. Marital conflicts causing constant arguments left him depressed, plus unfinished experiments fueling anxiety. That's when he remembered morphine in the fridge, syringes in the cabinet. He couldn't stop imagining the morphine rush. But remembering his vow to quit and become a psychologist, he forced himself to calm down. He declared, "It's over. Drugs were just youthful folly," then hummed a tune while returning to his experiments. Yet after hours of resistance, he cracked. Why does willpower crumble so easily against desire? Psychologists call it ego depletion. The brain consumes massive energy for daily tasks, more than any other body part. That's why mental work exhausts you even while sitting. Constantly suppressing urges drains mental energy like muscle fatigue. Like holding a horse stance, easy initially, agonizing after minutes. An addict's brain screaming, "No!" At temptation exhausts the self control region, making restraint impossible, a hallmark of addiction. Let's summarize. Addiction ties deeply to brain structures. Orbitofrontal cortex and striatum drive craving while trapping you in feedback loops. Quitting attempts trigger ego depletion, sabotaging recovery. This isn't just about weak character or lacking willpower. Neural mechanisms guarantee willpower's inevitable collapse. But even though quitting addiction is tough, it doesn't mean people should give up after getting hooked. No matter what you're addicted to, drugs, online games, soap operas, it can cause nasty consequences, messing up your life and health. So, since quitting so hard, how do we cure addiction? First off, rule one is not to abandon addicts. Understand that quitting addiction is a cycle of relapses. Lewis's journey took years. Actually, from the moment he started using drugs, he always wanted to quit. Though drugs brought him pain, his health tanked, and his marriage fell apart because of drug use. To score drugs, he even broke into homes multiple times. Finally, while stealing drugs from a pharmacy, he got caught red-handed. By then, he was a psychology grad student at Windsor University. This got him expelled and left a criminal record. Still, his repeated attempts to quit ended in failure. He tried all kinds of ways to kick the addiction, like getting therapy, writing for magazines, chatting with clean friends, even intense self-punishment. Sometimes he'd write vows in blood, cutting his hand to swear off drugs, but it still didn't free him from dependence. Once, while interning at a psych hospital, he couldn't fit into the new place fast enough, and loneliness ate away at his will. He relapsed. Another time, he broke up with his girlfriend. This left him furious and hurt, so he binged on Demerol and cocaine to numb out. High on drugs, he even thought about suicide for a bit. But right then, he heard an inner voice saying drugs would kill him. He couldn't do it. He had to say no. Lewis started imagining future possibilities, picturing himself clean for good. He kept repeating to himself, "I will do this." Then he realized saying no every moment was possible. Next, he forced himself to look elsewhere and explore other options. As I said earlier, addicts get hooked on one way to feel good, ignoring other possibilities. So, addicted people develop tunnel vision, losing other wishes and dreams. Thus, a key quitting strategy is shifting focus from that single addiction to exploring possibilities and cultivating new interests. Tell yourself, the world isn't all bad. Sure, it has dark corners, uncertainties, annoying rules, but that also means more possibilities exist. Drugs aren't the only escape. After months, Lewis found himself transformed. Though cravings still bit sometimes, his drug need dwindled dramatically. Occasionally, he'd allow 2 or 3 nightly drinks to cope on rough days. Later, he joined intensive therapy and got work at a homeless youth crisis center. This work made him feel decent again, helping teens like his former self. He found meaning and hope in life's other dimensions. Drugs ceased being his sole refuge. His psychologist dream ultimately saved him. As mentioned, he'd studied psychology at Berkeley and Windsor, but never graduated. Um, then he restarted with U of Toronto's Child Clinical Psychology program. His first post-enrollment exam earned an A+. In subsequent months, Lewis saw himself anew, a former addict who could actually excel through effort. He kept acing coursework. One paper even won Ontario's top psychology prize. One day, his advisor casually remarked over lunch, "You were born to be a professor." Those words echoed for months until he realized this was his calling. Later, Lewis got licensed, assessing and treating children and teens. He published papers steadily and earned tenure. He also became a father. Through later years, temptations arose, but he never relapsed into his addicted youth. Probably because his life became so full that he had no time to think about using again. Yet, the neural synapses altered by drugs in his 20s could never fully repair. Memories of drugs' pleasure remained etched in his brain. That concludes Lewis's story and our exploration of addiction. You might say Lewis's journey is unique, an addict transforming into a neuroscientist. Sobering reality check. Sobering reality isn't replicable for most. Many drowned in addiction without second chances. Even Lewis admits, once addicted, the brain never fully returns. So what can we ordinary folks learn from his experience? While not everyone abuses drugs, daily addictions like idol worship or alcoholism exist. Though less severe than drugs, these can still create unhealthy dependencies that disrupt life. If only stargazing, drinking, or gaming bring you joy, losing meaning elsewhere, beware, Lewis suggests. Learn to say no, tangibly, using fresh perspectives for support. This prevents exhaustion from eroding resolve. Fill your life richly enough. Even if old synapses persist, counter them. Recognize deceptive allure, never quit. Addiction reduces but doesn't eliminate brain flexibility. Lewis concludes, there's no cure, only sustained recovery and self-awareness, but happy endings exist. Mine did. All right, that concludes our exploration of the addicted brain. Book notes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.